Hello, NQ Jazz fans, and welcome to the latest episode of the NQ Jazz podcast. Today I'm chatting to the incredible Scottish jazz pianist Alan Benzie, and it's a really wonderful chat, so I hope you do enjoy. Alan came to join us at NQ Jazz quite soon before the pandemic hit in with Joe Williamson's fantastic Animal Society, and it was a really roaring gig. Alan played his socks off, so we were really looking forward to his trio joining us in May time or June, I think, and very sadly, of course, that gig had to be pulled. So that was very heartbreaking, but we're very glad he could join us to talk today and share some of his music, and we will hopefully have him as soon as we can when things are up and running again. So please sit back and enjoy the chat with Alan Benzie. Hello, Alan Benzie, and welcome to the NQ Jazz podcast. How have you been keeping?
Oh yeah, doing not bad, thanks. Sun's out, so
Yeah, blisteringly hot. We'll both be gleaming and glistening by the end of this. I presume you're up in Scotland currently.
Yep, in Glasgow.
In Glasgow, lovely. Have you been spending the last 6 months there? Have you been away at all, or?
Yeah, before lockdown, we were. In fact, it wasn't long before lockdown that we were down with you with Animal Society, and then I had a bit of touring with like a few different things before. So I was pretty busy before lockdown and kind of shooting about the place. But so yeah, it's been. Well, I'm not going to say it's been like nice as such,
Yeah.
but it's been in Glasgow for the past while. And
Yeah,
I do love
beautiful.
Glasgow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can't complain being back with all the people you know and all the rest of it. You do have a bit of a jet setting lifestyle with music, but we'll come to a bit of that later. But listen, so I wanted to delve in. You started life as a violinist, I read, and for a good while as well, not just like a year and then switching to piano. Do you still dabble? Do you still ever get the violin out, or is it locked?
It's just there.
Whoa!
The short answer is no.
Yeah.
I was playing it for a little bit. It was kind of I didn't have it for a while, and then I got it back. And it hadn't been out of the case in 13 years or something.
Whew.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Not far off. 12 years maybe. And yeah, so it's funny what stays and what goes. Obviously, intonation out the window.
Yeah, for sure.
Terrible. Um, but yeah, but I enjoyed playing it a little bit when I got back, just to see what would happen. I actually ended up playing it for one tune on a Fat Suit gig. It convinced me to do it.
Awesome.
Um,
How did you
yeah,
feel about that?
mixed.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun, but yeah, it's I think my feeling is that I would need to give it the proper respect.
Sure.
And it would take a lot of practice to get it back to where it was. But yeah, it was my serious kind of
Mm.
first instrument for, you know, 8 or 9 years.
And was that mostly in a classical context or a bit of folk world or
Yeah, I kind of wish that I'd done. I went to a fèis once, which is kind of like, I don't know if you've heard of those.
a
Um,
fèis?
yeah, kind of like music festival does not cover it, cultural festival doesn't cover it. It's kind of an
Sure.
education thing as well. But
Okay, cool.
my friend up in Glenuig, up north, and we did some fiddle stuff there when I went to that. But yeah, I actually kind of wish that I'd got to play more
Mhm.
Scottish traditional stuff when I did. But no, yeah, so really classical
Mhm.
focused. I did have a little jazz quartet for a very brief while with me playing violin. We
Awesome.
played we played Take Five in E. And then I wanted to play piano, so I kicked the guy that was playing piano off and said, right, you can play. Um,
And he had to play
yeah,
violin then, yeah?
he had to play trumpet then, so
Okay.
yeah. Although if he'd played violin, that would have been maybe interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so it was kind of predominantly yeah,
Mhm.
almost exclusively classical.
And so you say that that's around what your mid-teens or so then that you started getting into jazz. What was the tipping point? How did you come across the music, and what
We
inspired you to change course?
Yeah, I think we'd always had lots of different music on in the house.
Mm.
Um, both my mum and my dad have quite wide-ranging musical taste. So that included a bit of jazzy stuff, although more on the kind of ECM
Mm.
end of things.
Yeah.
My dad played a lot of like Jan Garbarek and Bob Stenson and stuff like that. So I guess, had a passing familiarity with at least the vibe, if you will, or that jazz wasn't a foreign concept as
Yeah.
such. And then at St Mary's, I went to a
Mm.
music school in Edinburgh to do classical violin. They had jazz days there.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Ooh, play some jazz for a day. And you would get like an hour with this guy Richard Ingham.
Mm. Oh no, Richard. Yeah.
Richard, legend.
Well, I was a classical sax player in my former life, so I know Richard through those circles, and then obviously know Dom and I've had my like Rory.
Dom and Rory, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and they're brilliant, and Richard's brilliant, and yeah. So we did that, and so I was doing that on violin, obviously, and I could rant on about all of that, but basically, I really enjoyed those jazz days a lot,
Brilliant.
and just like
Yeah.
my 4 bars of like, you get to make something up for 4 bars. I'm like, yes, I have 4 bars. I want 8 bars. I want, right? And so that was really fun. And there was a guy a few years above me at St Mary's who played jazz piano,
Hmm.
and I just thought he was extremely cool. I mean, well, he was pretty cool. Played pretty good jazz piano, and so I kind of got him to show me some stuff on that.
Mhm.
He introduced me to Esbjorn Svensson Trio
Mm.
at EFT, and I went to see them live, and that I think is what really put me over the edge
Yeah.
into like, this is what I want to do, and I will drop everything else to do it.
Well, it's a big choice when you've already been studying really seriously doing that. And
It was, and
how many years ahead of like conservatoire auditions and all of that was this?
that might have been 2 years max.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't think it's probably a good thing that I wasn't fully cognizant of what that meant.
Yeah.
Because now I'm really lucky that my piano teacher at St Mary's, Margaret Wakeford, legend, stuck with me despite the fact that I never practiced
Yeah.
piano. I'm going to be a classical violinist. Like, well, I'm not practicing piano.
Yeah.
Thankfully, she stuck with me enough that I could kind of play. But I mean, someone did describe, and I always say this because it just makes me laugh, but my piano playing at the time when I said, right, I want to do jazz piano as my thing, they said my piano playing was rudimentary at best. So
that should still be the first press quote you have for
yeah,
every
totally.
gig.
That'd be great. Yeah. No, this didn't get back to me at the time.
Yeah.
It was in maybe consultation with other people, and I think the school were initially, reticent to take someone who was,
Mm.
obviously at a relatively advanced stage on the violin, and say you can do jazz piano as your main thing, especially for at that time still a predominantly classical music school.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a bit of a battle to get it done, but they ended up really getting on board.
Brilliant.
And I think I was lucky that my first teacher was Steve Hamilton.
Hmm.
I hope that people are familiar with him. But he amazing piano player, great guy, and he taught me first, and then a guy called Chick Lyle later who's also brilliant. And I think I was really lucky to have people like that, Richard, and then Tommy Smith's ended up getting into Tommy Smith's Youth Jazz Orchestra, and Nijos, these various things that there's a lot of stuff that helped. But yeah, it wasn't. It was a very short and intensive period.
Yeah.
To get ready for But I mean, I was
Awesome.
so geeky about it and so obsessed that I think I just you couldn't get me to not
Yeah.
play it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
I think just getting the technical chops side of things together though in that shorter space of time is no small feat whatsoever.
thank you to Margaret Wakeford, my teacher, 100%.
Brilliant. 3 hours of Hannon every day.
The Hannon, do the Hannon, yeah.
Like 5 months ago at the start of lockdown and all of that, every man and his dog was doing a little mosaic tile of or an album a day of like these are the albums that I love and all this. I finally got around to doing it last week, like 5 months after.
I've still not done mine.
Yeah, everyone had been I nominate Kyron. No. But I found it last week, and it got me thinking back to a lot of albums that I had been listening to when I first got into jazz, or what got me really engaged. Um,
Yeah.
so, what albums in particular? Obviously, EST you mentioned. Any particular albums of theirs, and any other general things that you would recommend to the world to go and check out?
Well, there's lots of things I'd recommend, but
Mm.
specifically from that time,
Yeah.
yeah, 7 Days of Falling was the EST record that I was particularly into. And what else? Quite a few records. I think back, Speak No Evil, Wayne
Mm.
Shorter
Yeah.
was huge, and I think that's huge for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I actually, I still at that point didn't listen to that much straight ahead.
Mm.
So I mean, obviously I listened to Bill Evans and McCoy and Herbie and Chick and Keith and all that stuff, and super enjoyed all those things as well. I think some of those came a little bit later,
Mm.
relative to kind of what I was um, really getting into at that time. But yeah, definitely all. I mean, any of the good records by any of those guys are
Yeah.
obviously good.
Yeah.
I was also really into a band called and now pronunciation wise, it's either Yaga Yazist or Jaga Jazzist. They're like a Norwegian band. Absolutely so super cool. And a
Awesome.
lot of other things in there, jazz, but kind of there's drum and bass and almost film musicy kind of things, and
Mm.
loads of things in there. And I really like them as well. And they have an album called A Living Room Hush,
Awesome.
which is
I'll have to go and check that one out. That's a band I know of and haven't ever sat and listened to properly. So awesome.
some of my
Yeah.
friends at school went to see them. I introduced them to the band, and then they were old enough to go see them in Edinburgh when they came, and I wasn't. And I was like, "You traitors!"
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't bootleg this.
You bet, yeah, exactly.
After all that, anyway, you ended up going off and studying over in Berkeley. How did the decision come about? A, to apply for Berkeley, and why Berkeley over studying in Scotland? Obviously, it's fantastic course up in Scotland, and people know all this. Not to say obviously Berkeley's not a fantastic course and all that as well.
Sure.
But with everywhere in the world, why? What was the draw over to America and Berkeley? How did that all come about?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is the RCS course didn't exist yet. I think people often
Oh,
forget.
really? I
And
didn't
like,
realize it was that recent. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I think it was 10 years or something quite recently.
Wow.
But I think people also, because I also look pretty young. I think people forget that I'm in a sense like the generation the previous to that in some ways. So the RCS course didn't exist yet. And I applied for a couple of the colleges in London as
Mhm.
well. Um, but yeah, Berkeley, I mean, Tommy Smith obviously had gone
Yeah.
to Berkeley, and Steve Hamilton, my first
Oh,
teacher,
okay. Yeah.
who like I just well still adore his playing
Mm.
to this day. And so I guess a couple of my close role models or people that were mentoring me had been there. And I guess it was also, I suppose, just the idea of going to the States,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
where even if Boston itself isn't where the music originated, but there's a lot of history with the music there, and then you think of people that are teaching there, Joe Lovano, Joanne Brackeen, Danilo Perez, blah blah blah, like
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that would have probably been a big bit of it, but yeah, just the kind of opportunity to go somewhere far away, and um, yeah, hopefully get my arse kicked.
Yeah. 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 Fantastic. And well, yeah, and congratulations, because you went over with a healthy scholarship and all the rest. Was that the Billboard thing?
I
Was that?
won this Billboard Award later,
Oh,
which
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
for something like a final year student in
Oh,
English,
okay. Yeah.
something can't remember, um,
Yeah.
or either I can't remember or I'm too shy to say
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's fine.
But yeah, I was lucky to get a scholarship as well, and then not only that, but I was really lucky to have funding also from the Donald Dewar Arts Award,
Is
Robert
that a
Nichols
Scottish-based fund?
Scholarship.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
That's right. And it funds lots of different arts things. But at the time, they were still doing kind of not a lot, but quite large grants as well. So I mean, I don't think I would have been able to go. had it not been for that. Because despite the scholarship, it's just a staggering amount of money.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's obscene, really. But,
Yeah. And in a way, it was a good thing as well because having funding from various places, not that I think I would have needed this, but kept me on the straight and narrow, you might say, for all my classes.
yeah,
And you might have been tempted to go, history, Western music, I did that already when I did A level or whatever. Or liberal arts classes that you have
yeah.
to do in American degrees.
Oh yeah.
I'll just scrape, whatever, but it kind of really
Yeah.
put a little bit of pressure on to do well. And I think that maybe actually in some ways was a good thing.
Yeah.
And obviously it was a good thing to be able to go.
Yeah.
And have the funding to go. And also to be able to finish without any like student debt or anything. It's huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
You look at American graduates now, and I just don't.
Oh, yeah.
How it boggles the mind. Really.
Yeah, doesn't bear thinking about. It's bad enough if you've studied in the last 10 years or whatever it is over here. Never mind the ridiculous things you get
exactly.
over there. Obviously up in Scotland you've got a much more sensible deal of everything than the rest of the UK anyway. But anyway, so it is just flagging up in my head there. I can't believe that the Scottish Jazz course has been such a long time. So it means I wouldn't have even had the choice of going and studying there when I was going either. That course has rocketed in a really short space of time. That's phenomenal. Yeah. Anyway, but so fantastic. So at Berkeley, you obviously met a large array of musicians who, as everyone doesn't go off to college, but you've formed a lot of long-lasting musical relationships from that. That we can come to in a sec. But do you want to talk through a few of the people who stood out musically while you were there and you got to collaborate with, and people you've carried on working with from then?
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting because many people may say this of their time in college. It's not always the people that you think are great at the time that go on to do well or become well known, if you know what I mean, which is really interesting, you know what I mean? Melissa Aldana was there when I was there.
Yeah.
Lawrence Fields was there when I was there. Takeshi Obayashi was with Josie James. He was there when I was there, and we got on really well. Who else? Mark Whitfield Jr., Jonathan Pinson. These are, just names that spring to mind. Tamir Schmerling, bass player, is really good. I'm probably missing out like a bazillion people.
Oh yeah.
It's because it's such a big place. But but for example, Adam Neely was there at the same time. And Adam was great. I didn't know him really well, and it was obviously great at the time. But you wouldn't necessarily have predicted how that would go. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Then obviously for me, there's also kind of long-lasting friendships and musical relationships, many of which are in Japan, and then one of which is in my trio right now.
Yeah.
That's Martin.
Yeah. And so tell me a bit about the Japanese link. Do you think there's a Japanese tour in the making at any point in the future?
I would love that. I have played over there a good number of times.
With that same group of people, or
not with my band, but with people from those days, and so that's really nice to be able to do that. But yes, I would love to take the trio at some point. Seeing the roadmap to that is another matter, but that would be amazing. And I think Japanese audiences that I've played to have seemed to receive my music really well, so that's nice.
Yeah. And you also play another musician that you met over there that I think you still play with, Leonardo Radici. I might be pronouncing his name.
I think I'm not. I hope I'm right.
Radici.
Yeah, that's really fun, and that started really recently.
Okay.
We knew each other going way back. We did like a free improv class. He's a cool guy. He's a great guy. He lives like in the really middle of nowhere.
In Italy, or
in Italy, outside Florence.
Beautiful.
He got in touch with me and Martin, who plays drums in my trio, and we were also working together. and said, "Do you want to kind of do a quartet with me and this Italian bass player called Ferdinando?" And yeah, so we went over and it was really, really good. And I ate so much pasta. It was, yeah,
Yeah.
it was, oh, it's delicious though.
Yeah, I had a great time over in Italy. I think 2 years ago. Emily was. Yeah, for those people watching who don't know who Emily is, Emily's the other half of Enki Jazz, but is also my partner as well. She was touring with Opera North in Italy. I can't remember what production they were doing. No, it's gone out of my head. But anyway, I took a few days off to go and join them in Bologna, just for a bit of crack. And there was as always seems to happen in Italy more than other places, there was a national strike the day I was supposed to be flying back.
Okay.
So I was told basically there was a 3 day delay on me being able to get my flights back, which annoyingly meant I missed 4 gigs and a day's teaching at Leeds College of Music in that period. But it did mean I had to get put up and fully fed and accommodation and all the rest of it on the airlines book for a few days. Yeah, so I made up 4 gig fees worth of money on outrageous eating out. So
Yeah. Oh
that
man,
was
I
my
just,
mission.
I couldn't believe just how, it really puts things into perspective actually.
Mm.
Um, though, just the general quality of food.
Yeah.
Um, and actually it's similar in Japan, like they don't mess about
Mm. Yeah.
food, and yeah, I so it was very, very good. But I think if I was there for a long time, it would become dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, the cheese was the bit that really would have gotten to me very quickly. But anyway, so yeah, fantastic. So tell us a bit about then Martin, I suppose, because that's probably the biggest connection that you've made going forward. But
Totally.
obviously, he's the drummer in your trio, and he's Hungarian. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how does it work now having a trio that's spread out halfway across Europe?
Yeah, I know. Well, the funny thing is the very first gigs I did, kind of before it was the trio, but I kind of the first, I guess, for the first one that I was doing something that was like a trio that I was writing
Mhm.
music for was a Korean drummer and an
Oh, awesome.
American player.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, when I came back to Scotland, I called Martin. I wanted to with him, and for the first, I think, couple short tours we did, I brought the American bass player Dylan Coleman, his name is,
Hmm.
brought him over to do those. And then it kind of just became not really feasible
Yeah.
to do that. Um, so I called Andrew,
Mhm.
who I obviously knew very well from a young age here in Scotland, and he was, I think, in London at the time, but of course then he moved to Norway. Um, so yeah, and I think that has had its difficulties for sure,
Yeah.
because you can't just say, oh, we've got an offer for a gig, you know, so and so. Can we all do it?
Yeah.
It has to be a tour, or it has to be a really, really,
Yeah. Big festival thing.
whatever it is. There has to be certain kinds of things to make that work. So that has had its challenges. But I think for me personally, they're just the guys I want to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, they're special. And it wouldn't be Alan Benzie Trio if it wasn't them. And
For sure.
we don't swap out, or that's just, we don't do that. So
Well, listen, this feels like the perfect place to stop and take a listen to the first track that you've picked out for us, which is The Warrior Who Became a
mouthful.
Tiger. Sorry?
A bit of a mouthful, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the Warrior Who Became a Tiger. And this features a good bit of Martin in it as well, doesn't it? So you can tell us a little bit about this track before we take a listen.
Sure. Now, I need to make sure not to get in trouble. It's a well-known thing and a joke in the trio, and also in my other friends in the scene, how long I take talking about my tunes. They've all got yeah, they've all got stories behind them. I
Yeah.
never struggle for a title,
Mhm.
because I always have the title, or recently I almost always have the title first in the net, and I write to it.
Oh, okay.
So I got the idea for this tune watching a Japanese animation, and there was just this story about a warrior who was kind of so obsessed with becoming, with strength and kind of, becoming the greatest warrior, or whatever, that he kind of took to wearing a tiger skin into battle to make him more like a tiger or something. And therefore stronger, and etc., etc. Only to then actually turn into a tiger. And then,
intentionally or unintentionally?
No. I think it's kind of a fable kind of thing. So,
Okay.
so not on purpose. So to be so driven down that path, that he ends up actually turning into a tiger, and then the upshot of that is losing the ability to speak and communicate as humans do, and so he ends up losing all family and friends, whatever, and living the rest of life lonely in the forest. And that just grabbed me,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty interesting, and so kind of the idea for this tune formed in my head. So it's mostly quite high energy, kind of reflect that, and actually I sometimes do a kind of a sad bit at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but not on. Recently, I don't do that as much, and I don't do it on this version. And that bit is actually a separate track on the album.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. And is this off the first or the second album?
The second album, Little Mysteries.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Well, sit back and enjoy The Warrior Who Became a Tiger. Fantastic playing there. Thanks very much to Alan, Martin, and Andrew for all of that. For those of you watching, obviously you won't know we edited out the 20-minute long introduction that Alan did before that. We gave you the gave you the truncated version.
Only 20 minutes. Wow, I'm getting better.
It's all right. We've got time in the next one. It's all right. So listen, winding up then at Berkeley, you've obviously got the decision ahead of what to do post-study. Was it ever a consideration to stay in the States and try and make the career over there? How come you ended up, the world's your oyster at that point, but obviously you felt the draw of home. So talk us through all of that.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, people kind of ask this quite a lot, understandably, because it's very common for people who graduate Berkeley, especially if you kind of do all right during your time there, to move to New York or LA or Nashville or maybe I guess some people Chicago or whatever. And to be honest, I think partly through winning that award, the college started to send me out a little more to do clinics or I guess you call them workshops and things like that. And I this is something that I'd started to feel a little bit, but I started to kind of encounter some attitudes towards the music that I wasn't a fan of, I guess. And now, let me be very clear. I think, knowing and loving the tradition is great and fine, and playing with energy and passion is fine. But I think when that becomes a dogma, and then when someone's saying, you got to play with your balls and stuff like that, you're kind of going there's so many things that I have a problem with there. And I think I felt that I didn't want to be on a scene if that was the kind of thing I was going to encounter. Now, looking back, if you go to New York, there's loads of sub scenes and things like that within the scene. So it's not as if it would have been, but how I felt at the time was that I was possibly going to end up kind of being pushed into that kind of direction, and that was I didn't feel positive about that at all.
I can completely understand that.
And my as I said earlier as well, I got into the music more through Jan Garbarek or Both EST, that kind of direction than a super straight ahead direction, although I adore that music. I do, and I do my best to play it as best I can when I do. And of course part of going to America was wanting to get more of that tradition, obviously, and the things that has to offer. I think I just maybe had enough, and maybe enough America as well, although I had a great time there for sure. I might have been interested to try Japan, I will say. But it seemed the kind of most sensible thing just to kind of go back to Scotland and then kind of take stock a little bit. And just ended up staying here. And I mean, I love it here now. And I'm glad that,
I mean, there's a fantastically thriving scene for sure,
Sure.
and it seems the experience that we get at Enki Jazz in Manchester is everyone who comes through are just fantastic people as well, So you've got a great.
Oh well, in a way,
you look like you're about to go. Actually, there's loads of arseholes. You just have to met them yet.
No, I think more that in a way, obviously we'd all be very happy if it's they're great musicians or whatever. And I'm not saying obviously I'm not saying you're not saying that, and I'm not saying that we're not, right. But I think the idea that we would as a whole be nice people is
I know
lovely, and I'm very, very happy if that's how you feel about it.
Then. That's the impression we've got from the people who've come down and played for us anyway. So,
but when I think through the list of people I know that have come down, then I think they're all really nice. So, but I think in general the vibe here is good, especially right now. And I think it's interesting for me you know, as I said earlier, of, you know, actually kind of in a sense being slightly of the generation before, in kind of mini generations, if you will, or now a couple of generations in some senses. Um, I think the younger guys that have been coming up, you know, many of whom have come through that RCS course and so on, just have a really nice openness and kind of, and I saw Fergus talking about this on the podcast the other week. Just that they, you know, they seem to like each other's music and they want to encourage each other. And well, and I'm part of that too, obviously being in some of those bands. And I think in a way that's what I think is most healthy about it, is that kind of sense that people really want each other to do well.
Yeah.
And that's really nice, because it's not always like that.
Do you think that stems from there being a bit more of a centralised hub in the conservatoire rather than people coming to it from lots of different angles? Or?
It could be, and I don't know if there's a more general thing that I think it's perhaps a little bit more acceptable these days to really be into a wide range of things. You know, and not just in Scotland, but yeah, I think in general. And so maybe that helps also in that, you know, while you might have had a previous time where you said, oh, look, that's not jazz that they're doing, or that's not, you know, why are they getting jazz or whatever, you know, this kind of thing. I think you know, yeah, it's starting to become more normal that you know, it's okay to like loads of different things, you know.
Yeah, certainly all to the best that. So I'm glad that's the case for sure. So listen, then we finally get to debut albumsville. So this is 2015, Traveller's Tales. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is obviously this is your trio with Andrew and Martin. Talk us through how that all came about and putting that together, and why was that the right time eventually for that tour?
Yeah, really good question. By which I mean let me. Yeah, so people had. Again, I get so shy about saying this, but so I won the Scottish Young Jazz Musician of the Year when I was 17, right? Which is also, you know, just silly because we already talked about, you know, my piano playing was rudimentary at best, and then I don't know how that happened either.
I think that should be the full press quote, shouldn't it? Rudimentary at best, 2017 Young Jazz Musician.
He doesn't know himself, like, you know. But yeah, but you know, from that moment, I feel like people were like, "Where's your album? Where's your album?
Yeah,
your album." And you know, I very intensely felt that I did not have enough to say yet.
Yeah.
To make a record, and you know, and that lots of things weren't there yet. Make a record now. Obviously, you're never going to feel like now my playing is perfect, so time to make a perfect record. Like, you know, obviously that doesn't happen, and you're always going to look back and say, okay, maybe this thing, or you know, now I have a different perspective, or now I like different kinds of things, or you know, all of that stuff. But yeah, in 2015, we were playing for a couple of years with Martin and Andrew, and just had a body of stuff that seemed to make sense. I felt in a good place about the band. I felt in a okay place about my own playing and writing, as much as you can, you know. And so that then I started to get the feeling of like, okay, I have something to say, I guess, or something to put out there that kind of has an actual concept or has an actual vibe about it that seems, if it's not a bit of hubris to say so, in some ways unique to me.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of waiting to at least have that feeling in some way before I made an album.
Well, that's great. You know, I think that's a really admirable thing. And like you say, there is a lot of pressure to get the thing out. You know,
Totally.
where is the thing? Why don't we have the thing yet? So yeah.
But I think it's really interesting for young musicians now, because you know we live in a completely different industry and world now. now if you don't have some kind of recorded video material, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so I think in a way, young musicians in a sense kind of have it tough there because they're expected to, but also I think they're the youngest that are growing up now are totally used to that anyway.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, that kind of time to really marinade, if you will, there's a little bit less of that. And obviously you've got guys, there's guys in Scotland here who are crazy young and doing really worthwhile,
Yeah.
super enjoyable, great music. So it's not that that doesn't happen, but yeah, I think that it's just a totally different thing. And so now I would say to young musicians, make sure you have a presence,
Yeah.
because you're gonna need that, or people are gonna look and say, "Where were you in such and such?" Or
Yeah.
where's your this, where's your that. So it's a really different thing now. Yeah. Whereas I, at least to some degree, even 5 years ago, or whatever, had a little bit of the luxury of taking my time with that.
Yeah, definitely. And so, following then, debut album 3 years later, I think, was Little Mysteries.
Hmm.
And so, what changed with the trio between those two? What was the thought with the second album as distinct to the first?
I think there was a few things. I guess if you do one album, you're like a band, if you know what I mean. But if you do more than one album, you're a band. If that makes
Yeah,
sense, right?
yeah,
And obviously we talk about the difficult second album and all
yeah.
that kind of stuff. Um, After and I don't know if you've experienced this, or and I'm sure other people have too. After we recorded the first album and released it, I was like, I'm never gonna write any music again. I don't know. I think that's me. I think I'm done. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced that. And yeah, over the next while, I kind of found myself writing more music, and I think Little Mysteries, in a way, there were lots of little mysteries to kind of solve
Mm,
there. One of which was, how do we keep this band going when none
mm,
of us live in the same country?
yeah,
And we're not like superstars, so we can't
yeah,
just be like, hey, we've got an international band, there we go.
yeah,
How do we make this work? Can we make it work? um, so that was part of it. And then I think as well, as I said earlier, a lot of my stuff is kind of story driven.
mhm,
I love reading. I love, you know, uh, as I say, Japanese animation. I love video games of a certain ilk.
mhm,
Um, and so that kind of stuff is in the music a lot.
mm,
And I guess the idea as well was that, like, a lot of the tunes, the warrior who became a tiger.
mm.
What?
Yeah.
You know, what is that? So, in a sense, kind of little mysteries in that sense too. So it kind of, that's just kind of what came to me when I was trying to kind of encapsulate that album in terms of the music, and kind of in terms of us as a band as well, at that time.
Yeah. Well, fantastic, and we links to those underneath the podcast. Obviously, go and check the albums out. Go and buy the albums. Wait for and the next Bandcamp Friday or whatever.
Yeah, I'm put them on Bandcamp actually.
Oh, they're
Um,
not there yet.
I know, yeah, I still haven't got on the Bandcamp. Obviously, I've had them on CD Baby and stuff, but actually, I usually just like post them to people myself. So
Lovely, beautiful. Well, we'll link to the website.
yeah,
Go direct. Beautiful. Listen, so there's a few other projects I just want to have a quick run through.
yeah,
Or a few obviously that I know of you working with in Scotland. The first we should obviously chat about Animal Society,
yeah,
because that was your first visit down to Manchester for our
yeah.
dance anyway. And that was a brilliant gig. We thoroughly enjoyed it. It's
Oh, so did we.
yeah, I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear. And I don't know if you saw a few weeks back, but we're no longer going to be working from the Whiskey Jar. The Whiskey Jar, unfortunately, have had to transform the venue space into some more bar space, etc. Which, everywhere's needing to do what it has to do to stay afloat at the moment. So we completely understand. But we've got some fantastic things lined up, which will be
great.
announce to the world at some point soon. I can,
Yeah.
when we stop recording, I can I can tell you a bit more.
Well, yeah, and
But
I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure people listening to this, need no convincing that it will be good.
oh, that's
Uh,
very kind, thank you. And but you had the privilege of doing one of the last gigs there for at the Whiskey Jar, and which was a 2.5 year run. So we've had
that's a
some
that's a
great bands
really
there.
good run, and obviously, like, you know, Word was even up here in Scotland. It was
Mm.
like, that's a really nice gig.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
really nice to hear.
the runner really nice. Like the audience is great. Like so, it had really good things being said about it, and
Well,
I'm sure.
fingers crossed.
Yeah,
If the audience comes with us, that's the lifeblood of the gig. You know, it's the
totally.
people there that make it the thing. And it was a beautiful room to play in as well. But we've got but there are other beautiful rooms as well. So
Yeah,
we
well, I
can.
know. Like, again, I was watching. Yeah, I've watched quite a few of the podcasts. I've been enjoying them.
No, great. Yeah.
I watched Fergus's one quite recently, and yeah, we're kind of just getting to play in kind of that is a really really intimate
Mm,
space,
yeah.
and like guys having a pint at my elbow,
Yeah.
and I love that,
Yeah.
and I've always said, and uh, obviously jazz life is what it is, right? But if you can make stadium money, right?
Yeah.
Let's call it right, but choose whatever size of room that you played in. I would play like small,
Yeah.
intimate, right here gigs. There's nothing like that.
And that's when we've had Jonathan Kreisberg's come to play a couple of times, and the last time it was with his full like New York quartet with Martin Bejarano and Colin Stranahan and
Yeah, man, it's so good.
there's the regular guys, and they only played in Pizza Express and the Whiskey Jar. They were the only UK dates for the band,
Yeah,
because he'd played the year before with Nelson Veras doing a duo set, and he just loved the space and the intimacy and all of that. So I think that's a massive you know sign of how much people do just love those intimate spaces to play in.
totally. Again, you still need that audience, and
Mm.
definitely. Obviously, my experience with Animal Society it was really fun to play
Yeah.
for that audience. And obviously the intimacy is one thing, but the audience is such a huge
Mhm.
part of that. Obviously,
Yeah.
and so yeah, yeah, really, really good time.
Yeah, well, we really miss seeing them on a weekly basis. They're
Yeah,
a lovely bunch of people. Because we're obviously on the floor and on the door and all the rest of it. We get to know them well. So if anyone out there is watching, I hope you're all keeping well.
yeah, hope so, man.
But listen, so Animal Society, were you
Yeah,
in that from its inception then, or is that yeah? And so
yeah,
this is Joe Williamson's project
that's
primarily.
right.
How much of that is collaboratively run, or is it a Joe Williamson?
Joe
Uh,
is definitely like a very strong driving force of it. So yeah, he asked me if I would do the band, and I was like, yeah, sounds fun. And at that point, it was only four of us, and then later on, we
mm,
added Craig, the other keys player, which I think has made a huge difference actually. Um, yeah, and in it, kind of just for a second, I was like, I wonder if like I got space and time to do it or whatever. And then I was just like, oh, whatever. Yes. So and it's been super fun.
mm,
Um, really really great. And kind of nice to kind of connect with Joe and Graham
mm,
more. I hadn't done as much with the other bands. So that's really cool. And yeah, it's just good energy. Joe writes all the music.
mm.
Um, we do have somewhat of a collaborative process, with taking the kind of the shells of the compositions and then, working on them and they do go through quite a few iterations.
That's
Um,
good though. That's healthy.
which might be a bit of a band joke, but yeah. And yeah, but it's just great, and I think it's a really positive. Funnily, as you were saying earlier, but it's a really positive band. Like I don't know many bands that play riffs like that and look so happy at the same time. You know what I mean?
That's great.
Someone said to me like, "You all need to smile less," you know. But everyone in the band is really nice and really fun. I actually feel sorry for Joe with rehearsal sometimes because we're quite garrulous. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it certainly was a lovely bunch and a great gig that one. So yeah, hopefully at some point we'll have you all back. And
yeah,
obviously we should say as well the primary reason we're doing this podcast is the trio was due to be playing at the Whiskey Jar a few
yeah,
months back, and obviously we
yeah,
had the gig cancelled due to pandemic obvious reasons. But so hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll be able to sort something out with that again.
yeah.
Yeah, especially off the back of the Animal Society gig, we were in waiting in anticipation of the trio, and then it was
Yeah.
really heartbreaking for it not to come off. But
Yeah, we were obviously really looking forward to it as well, and I was also kind of, it's always nice to be able to play to the same group of people, but like completely different projects.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of nice too, and obviously the Trio and Animal Society are
yeah,
incredibly different bands, and my role obviously is really different as well. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, but yeah, I do hope we'll get the chance because I say
yeah.
super enjoyed the one with Animal
Oh
Society.
yeah, we'll definitely make that happen. So listen, another one, or another couple of bands that I wanted to ask you about were Mezcla and Fat Suit.
Hmm.
And Fat Suit, I just really enjoy the name.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Who came up with Fat Suit? Um,
The story behind that is just
yeah.
a terrible pun, so
Oh, you can just leave that one to the side, or
well, I'm not an original member of the band, so I wasn't in the band
okay,
when that happened.
yeah.
So that kind of comes out very much of the Strathclyde Uni. Uh,
Oh, okay.
of course, there was a kind of very strong jazz thing there, and so kind of a lot of that kind of comes out of that course, and I kind of got to know those guys a little bit a while after I'd kind of come back from Scotland through.
Okay.
Actually through Strathclyde Youth Jazz Orchestra that were kind of based at
Oh,
they
okay.
was uni and all that, and I was doing some kind of teaching for that, and then various things, and so yeah, but they've become really good friends now, and obviously been in the band for a good while. Yeah, so the name, I think someone said, "Oh, what's the band called?" Or something. How many have you got in the band? Oh, we've got like 13 people in the band. Oh, that's a big outfit.
Dreadful. Yeah.
I really hope I've got that right. That is band is great fun, and actually
Mm.
I think that's been a huge learning experience for me because obviously I came from a certain um what would you call it, atmosphere. I don't know. Berkeley, obviously loads of different things going on in Berkeley, and
Mm.
I played different kinds of music and stuff there with loads of different people. But nevertheless, I think I was still kind of coming at music making from a certain perspective, you know, um, and I don't know, the jazz and the chops and the soloing and the and obviously like I love all that stuff. That's great, but I
Yeah.
think the cool thing about Fatsuit is I do think it's really a kind of in a sense greater than some of its parts, even though it's
Mm.
obviously got loads of people in it. But um, yeah, and I just enjoyed there's real mix of influences and styles, and also because there's so many more people in it, I really had to learn what's my role in this sound, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Not in a jazz quartet, not in a jazz trio where there's a lot of stuff and a lot of flexibility. And I'm still pretty flexible in Fat Suit, but
Mm.
sometimes my role is just like I play a melody on the synth, or sometimes I just
Yeah,
play
yeah.
a little hook thing, or and that's it's a totally different thing. And I really it took me a little while to kind of get that, and it also gave me a whole new respect for a bunch of music
Mm.
and people that make it. I'm not talking specifically Fatsu, but in general, that I may have, you know, yeah, written off a little bit in my my Berkeley kind of days or whatever. So I think
Yeah.
that's been really good,
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah. And then the last
and they're all
one.
super nice and super fun. I mean, like it's
Well, we'll certainly link to Animal Society Fat Suit and Mezcla below so people can check them out. Fat Suit's a lot of fun from the bits I
it's
checked
fun.
out. So yeah, Mezcla. This is David Bowden's thing, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah. So David's been to the night a few times. He was actually at the Wonder Inn where we started the night about
yeah.
4 years ago or so that he
Mhm.
played. with Square One. Was that his?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm not sure if that still exists. If that's
Well, I
still.
know that they had an album double bind with a special guest a while back. I'm not sure when their last gig was, but
Yeah.
yeah, good band. It
Yeah,
was.
yeah. But so yeah, so and David's been back. Is he in Fergus's trio? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, we saw him again not that long ago. Yeah, yeah. So Chad, tell us a little bit about Mezcla. Uh,
Yes, yeah. Again, super fun band that started slightly smaller than it is now.
mhm.
And again, of course, I say they're all fun and they're all like nice guys. It's all true, obviously. Even though it's like, that one's fun. And, oh, really nice people, and that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just really groovy, fun music. And there's a little bit of Scottishy kind of stuff in there, a little bit of African-y
Mhm.
kind of stuff, a little bit of South American-y stuff. Um, and it's kind of similar in the kind of funness of the music
Mhm.
factor to Fatsuit in some ways in my mind, but obviously content-wise pretty different,
Yeah.
and jazzier for sure.
Mhm.
Um, so we started that band again. I think David just asked if I wanted to do it, and this is nice again. For someone who I've been quite lucky, I guess, in kind of being in this kind of middle place in the generations where coming up. I kind of played with quite a few older musicians a bit, and then now I'm getting to with not significantly younger, but it's just in this kind of slightly different generation coming up. So
Yeah.
it's really nice that I've been asked to be in some of their bands, and then that's really fun for me, and
Yeah.
it's great, and it's they've got a lot of great friendships and
Mhm.
musical experiences with all of them. So he asked me to be in, and I'm trying to remember when exactly our first gig was. I do remember that on one of the early gigs, I hadn't had my dinner on time, and so I ended up taking a solo and eating a sandwich at the same time, which was really silly. Um,
I that just reminds me. I was checking out. Joshua Redman's reformed. Is it the not not? It's the Mood Swing Quartet, isn't it? That he's
the one
got.
with Meldow and Blade and Christian McBride.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was a mid-90s album or so. Mood Swing, and he's got the old teams back together. Um,
Right, right.
and but I was watching one of the videos that they've got. They put some videos up from a specific gig. I think there was obviously like
I've seen some of those, yeah.
and you've seen the hot sauce sitting on Brad's
Yeah.
piano.
Looking like a wee,
Has he got just some ketchup on his piano? What's going on?
what's happening there,
And then
It's
I
like,
read down in the comments and because there was a whole load of people going, "What's with the ketchup on the
yeah,
piano?"
yeah.
And it was a friend of his had brought some hot sauce for him. And had given it to him just before the start of the gig, and he had nowhere to put it, so he just sort of put it on the piano and started the first tune. I know, naughty, naughty, but
No, no materials like that on the piano.
yeah,
I mean,
but just sandwich
one
in
of the
one
great
hand,
piano
hot
players on the
sauce
face.
straight on, solo.
Well, that's my Nord, it's different. In fact, that might not have been my Nord at the time. Because I had a well, because obviously I come from an acoustic piano
Mhm,
background quite strongly, even though I played some keys kind of stuff in
mhm.
various things at Berkeley. And like this reminds me that for my first good while with Fatsuit, I was like borrowing Nords and synthesizers and stuff just to do it because they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, do you want to come and play?" And be like, "Yeah, sure." Um, oh, I don't have the keyboard, so
Yeah.
I need to borrow because I've finally got my own, obviously. But um, yeah, so the sandwich was over my Nord rather than
Yeah.
the beautiful, lovely piano.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do got a strong memory of that gig, and that was that first gig. I don't know if that was actually the first gig, but it was really good fun. And I
Okay.
think, yeah, uh, yeah, people who come to the shows just seem to have a really good time,
Mm.
and that also seems true of Fatsuit as well, and of course Animal Society and the trio as well. But
Yeah.
particularly Fatsuit and Mezcla, have a certain kind of an audience that's slightly different to
Yeah.
that brings people in beyond the kind of um, some of the jazz typical
Well,
audience.
Fat Suit certainly maybe more of like the standing crowd vibe than
Yeah.
sitting at your table and Yeah, it's not so much of a chin scratcher, arms folded, vibe.
Totally, yeah. And
But,
but well, I really like getting to be in those different kinds of projects because I do think that there's something special about an audience sat and a pin. You can hear a pin drop and ding,
yeah,
and then a note or whatever. I mean, that's super special. But yeah, it's definitely also incredibly fun to just
yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
and yeah, and then of course I think there's elements to which sometimes a jazz audience might want to be doing that, but maybe
Mm.
don't feel that they can, or
Yeah.
kind of get vocally approve during the tunes. But it's great when they get into it as well.
I get very overexcitable as an audience member in pretty much any context musically. The worst ones for me are if I go to like orchestral concerts and things like that. I get really sort of physically worked up, and I really want to get out of the seat or shout or something. And it's obviously
Yeah, totally.
completely
Well,
not okay. But
I mean, I'm by no means an expert. He said, prefacing a statement,
yeah,
that's the get out card, isn't it? I'm by no means an expert.
yeah,
And now but I do think about classical music, and of course, there have been voices within classical music for a long time calling for for
yeah.
ways to make that more accessible, and I think also as well though in other countries, it is okay to shout
Mm.
during an orchestral concert.
Yeah.
So there is that, and then also I think about theatre, and if you were going to play in Shakespeare's time, like it's
Oh
pretty
yeah,
different
yeah.
experience, I think. So yeah, I think but it's not uncommon, I think, for art forms, or maybe not only art forms, but to kind of as they progress, to sometimes become a little bit more stifled in
Mm.
that sense.
Yeah.
And I guess part of that is the complexity in some ways of whatever it is,
Yeah.
and the kind of the desire of the people making that music to be properly listened to.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some other factors at play, but yeah, I love it when someone wants to, like, as long as they're not spending the whole time just being like, yeah," obviously while we're playing, but the whole time. But yeah, I love it if people want to.
I had to remind Misha Mullavardo when he was doing his podcast with us that during his gig at the Wonder Inn for us, a fella in the audience during one of Misha's intros, just double bass free intro, just shouted out, "So many questions, but where are the answers?" Which has to go down in history as like the most profound heckle.
Yeah, it's either a super profound heckle or a really pretentious heckle.
Yeah, no, knowing the guy in question, he was being genuinely torn at the
Genuinely.
time of like,
Oh.
so much going on, but where are the answers?
Yeah,
Yeah. It was a
I mean,
totally honest reaction.
yeah, I mean, I think that's such a special thing for music in general. It's an honor, which sounds a bit, but to 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 get to play a role like that in
Mm,
someone's life, you
definitely.
know,
Yeah.
and in a way we've kind of seen some similar things to that with lockdown and everything,
Mhm.
that affirmation, things like music can have such a profound effect for people, and especially with a society that's been so focused on concrete outcomes, many of which are often strict economic or financial outcomes. And you know, yeah, you want to remind people that not everything's measured that way,
Yeah.
and those are the things that I think as a musician you live for. Um, the chance to just have an impact on someone that way. You know,
Certainly.
um,
Yeah.
so that's a special thing.
Absolutely. Well, listen, that feels like the perfect place to play in another track. So, please, can you introduce the second track that you've picked out, please?
Yeah, so obviously with the trio, we mostly play my music, and then sometimes a tune of Andrews or Martin's or whatever. But we do like other music. as well. Some other people have written some good tunes, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some decent things out there. And I think, yeah, we had a day off on the tour coming up, and I thought, oh, do you know what? We could go in and maybe just record some tunes that we like playing, not like an album or anything, just kind of record some tunes. At Guster, he plays bass in Animal Society, but also has his own studio and great kind of
Mm.
doing all that kind of stuff. So we went into his studio. It's got a piano in it, and just kind of played some tunes that we kind of had been playing a little bit. And I don't know how much we've been playing this one, but I brought this one as well because it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous tune. So it's by Ryuichi Sakamoto, who's kind of, I guess, best known as a kind of film composer probably, although he's done lots of things. And I guess as well, I've got quite a lot of connection with Japan and kind of things there. I've had quite a big influence for me. But yeah, so it's a beautiful tune, and I just thought, oh, maybe we'll play this. So it's called Bibo no Aozora, and it's by Ryuichi Sakamoto.
Thanks so much. Enjoy. Beautiful. That was Bibo na Aozora, or something along those lines, very closely. So listen, as we come to wind up things with the podcast, I want to ask you what your plans for the immediate and maybe slightly more long-term future are. Now that the difficult second album's out of the way, the easy third album is...
So easy, incredibly, yeah.
The facile third album.
Yeah, just, yes.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, look, an album. How did that happen?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, obviously want to do a third, would love to do a third album with the trio. We've got a lot of stuff to find out how that's going to happen. We are supposed to play in Switzerland in the not too distant future, and that gig has not been cancelled. Now, obviously, there's lots of things to consider with that, but and could be cool to record that live, maybe.
Brilliant, yeah.
About that, but yeah, we'd like to do a third album, definitely, one way or another. And I have definitely since lockdown kind of found a couple of tunes coming along, so we'll see how that goes. And in the immediate future, I'm going to say this now to help me actually do it.
Yeah.
So I've said it, and then whatever. So I'm thinking of basically starting, I don't know if it'll maybe just be a little Instagram page or something, we'll see how it goes, but I've been ignoring my incredible love for video game music, especially particularly Nintendo, for too long. And again, like I kind of might have meant, in a similar vein to like what I mentioned with Fatsuit earlier, but I think when you go through a traditional jazz education but you have wide-ranging tastes, I think over the rest of your life, you keep having to give yourself permission to do things.
Yeah.
And you're worried about what someone might think, or this isn't whatever. But yeah, especially the recent Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, the music is incredible, and I just so much of that music is really deeply important to me. But yes, I want to start something where I'm kind of doing that, but maybe with bringing my own thing to it a little bit. Yeah. We're going to do that, and then obviously hoping to keep going with, Fatsuit, Mezcla, Animal Society. There's a few other bits and bobs as well. So just kind of trying to, and I think if there's one thing maybe that lockdown has just made me think about, is just, and I'm sure a lot of people are saying this, is just the balance. Yeah. So to keep doing those things as best I can, and just make sure that the balance is right.
Yeah, no, fantastic. To follow up just on the video game music side of things, is that project in your head currently a solo thing, or is this going to be a new ensemble?
Yeah, well, actually, I do have a band with a couple of the guys from Fatsuit and Michael Butcher, who I don't know if you know Michael, but
yes.
Yeah, he's brilliant. So he plays Mezcla, as well.
I know him from somewhere else, and I can't remember where. But I'll go and dig that out myself.
He's done some stuff with Porto Alto. Tom McGuire and the Brassos does that. Loads of he's great. So we have a band that does this stuff. So we did a gig. Oh, so much fun. Well, back absolutely rammed as well with just people who love video games music, I guess. So we had a great time. Yeah, and again, mostly Nintendo, but lots of kind of arrangements of stuff, and obviously with jazzy bits, and all that we bring to it. So yeah, we've got it's not my band, but kind of we have a band that kind of does that pretty rarely because everyone in it's so busy. Yeah. But I would love to do more. But yeah, right now, kind of, I guess a solo piano thing with appropriate collaboration here and there, maybe with other people that love this stuff too.
Fantastic. Well, can't wait to see all that, and we'll make sure to give it a share when it pops up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
we'll get something a bit different. Yeah, well, we'll get the podcast out really quickly, and then you're beholden to your word.
Then I have to do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, listen, Alan, thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Oh, an absolute pleasure, and we hope to see you at our new venue as soon as we can make all of those things work.
Yeah, I'd say really hope that comes together well. I'm sure it will, and looking forward to it.
Well, enjoy Switzerland, and we'll see you soon. Take it easy.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye. Hello again, NQ Jazz fans. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today, and a huge thank you to Alan for taking the time out to talk to us and to share his amazing music. Please head over to patreon.com/NQJazz, where for a very small monthly subscription you can access about 50 hours worth of our digital content, including podcasts, concerts, silent movies with improvised soundtracks with some really incredible guest artists from the UK jazz scene, and the odd guest artists from overseas as well. So please do go and check all of that out. In the meantime, take care, and we will see you again very soon. All the best.